thanks, Steve, for coming in. This is exciting. This is pretty early on in the podcast, but this is the Beyond the Brand podcast, and we've got Steve Red here with us, who has kind of made this all happen, and so we're excited to hear your story and your background, and just learn a little bit more of who Steve is and why you're doing what you're doing today.
Glad to be here.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just start off by just going into kind of your background and your growing up on the ranch and what that was like and your experiences, and then we can, as we go on, talk a little bit more about the history of the ranch and things like that, but just kind of take it wherever you'd like to go.
Thank you. At the risk of going back too far, right? Nobody ever wants to hear about the day you were born, but I grew up on this ranch right on the Utah-Colorado border, and the best way I know how to describe it is it's just always, I've never thought of myself as anyone except this ranch kid that came, grew up here, and it was just in our blood, and always wanted it to be a part of my life moving forward. Never even envisioned a life doing something different when I was a kid, thinking about what I wanted to be. It always involved the ranch. It's kind of, I guess, maybe one important thing to say, but grew up one of 7 kids on this ranch, and spent summers. A lot of my summers I spent in a cowboy camp, which consists of a little trailer, and probably the coolest thing that I can say I got from all that was at a young age feeling like I was doing a man's work. Whether I was or not, right, is debatable, right? But feeling like I was, but and that's just continued. I've had the privilege to purchase a good portion of the family ranch that I grew up on, and I'm continuing that today.
The continuing, I think that's like looking back at the heritage of the ranch and continuing it. What is it that drives you to want to continue that and to keep that passion going, as you probably had the opportunity to get out of it if you wanted to, if you saw a different path that you thought would be more successful? What's kept you?
That's an excellent question that I don't know I've ever been any good at articulating. As I've visited with my wife, who grew up in the country but not on a ranch. And she's convinced I'll spend every dollar I ever get on a cow or a piece of dirt, right? It's just, I guess the best way to describe it is it just feels a part of my heritage and my blood. And I love the challenge of making a ranch work. I mean, I grew up on a ranch where there was not other money outside sources, right? Like, it had to produce. And I listened to a lot of conversations with my dad, overhearing him visiting with the banker, trying to get through to the next year. And so part of me just loves that challenge. But in the end, I don't know many things that make me happier than seeing cows on green grass. So I have to be honest, there's some parts of it that are illogical, I'm sure. But the bottom line is I love it. I love the lifestyle. I love the people. And it just feels like it's something that not just that I should, not heavy that way, but that I just want to make sure it continues. Yeah, I like that. I also feel similar, that there's a fulfillment that you feel in agriculture and for me in the cattle world that I haven't found that you can replicate those feelings of just like you're feeling like you're doing something, making a difference, I guess. Yeah, for sure.
So I like that. But tell me a little bit now, about not the history of that area, but the history of the ranch that you now, you've kind of has come through your family and what you have now. Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah. Well, so my ancestors were Mormon pioneers that came through the hole in the rock down to the Bluff, Utah. It's by Blanding, Utah, Monticello, Utah area, in the mid-1800s there. And that's really where the ranching, as we think of it today, started, right? I claim I'm a 5th generation rancher, and like, on one hand, I'm like, should it be 4th, 5th? I'm not sure it should be 8th, right? Because they were all in agriculture even when they came from Tennessee and before that, North Carolina. But so it started there in the 1800s, and there was a company formed called the Sal Livestock Company. And my grandfather, Charlie Red, when he was, I'm going to get these dates wrong, but I don't think he was 30 years old yet.
Wow.
He was named the manager, and it was during tough times, like things weren't going well. And through a series of events, he and his father, and he ended up buying out everyone else.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess an interesting part of that is his father, Lemuel Hardison Jr., asked Charlie to make two promises to him on his deathbed, and it fast forward to a time when the bankers were basically suggesting to my grandfather, you know what, Charlie, you're a young man, you need to let this go, like this debt you're taking on, that you're taking on from your father, and when you took over this operation, it's likely that you're going to spend your whole life getting out of it.
Paying it off.
You're a young, capable man. Go do something else.
Interesting.
And he said, yeah, you might be right, but I made two promises to my dad on his deathbed. One was that I would keep peace in the family, and two is that I would pay his debts. He says, I've done such a poor job on the first one, I have to do the second one. And that's the legend, that's the story of why he kept moving forward, even when the debt to assets were upside down. And because of that decision, I'm still in the ranching business, so I'm grateful for it.
Yeah,
I've seen my dad go through similar, financial challenges.
Okay.
But here we are today, and part of what we own. It's kind of fun to go back. The Pittsburgh Cattle Company actually owned at one point an investing group from back east.
Okay.
And then there were others, and the Cunningham Carpenter that owned a portion of it, and these have been put together over the years.
Okay.
My grandfather and whatnot. But,
interesting. And those were part of the Sal Livestock. Okay.
Yeah. So again, and depending on whether you're talking about in 1930 or 1960, some of those things came together and have kind of meshed and whatnot. Yeah. My cousin to this day, he runs right next to me, and he identifies his company as LaSalle Livestock.
Oh, no kidding.
So yeah.
Okay. And so with what your grandpa did and when he took over, was it always cattle, or where was it? There was some sheep in there.
There were sheep.
Okay.
Yeah, lots of sheep. I would get the numbers wrong if I told you, but it's probably not an uncommon expression. But my family always says, Grandpa Charlie said, we raised the sheep for the money, the cattle for the prestige, and the horses for the fun, right? And I've had the opportunity to go back and find some old ledgers, and I think that was definitely true in the 50s. And so lots of sheep and a lot of cattle. But I think there was a time when the sheep pulled the weight for sure.
You hear that a lot on some of these Western ranches, that they had sheep just to pay for things and pay for the land, and then once it was paid for, they got rid of the sheep and just ran the cows.
Right.
The glory of it, or the prestige, like you said.
For sure.
That's interesting. Sure. And so I've been fortunate enough to travel with you and to meet some different people, and there's been several times where your grandfather has come up in the conversation in many different states around here, and so he had a tremendous reputation, and he must have made an impact on a lot of people for the things that he did, and must have been a very
it seems like it. He passed away when I was 1 year old, so I personally never knew him, and so as I run into someone who knows him, just like when we were visiting with Gib Yardley the other day, and he had stories about my grandfather. I mean, that's just like Christmas for me.
Yeah.
Like, tell me,
how
this really went down. Yeah, for sure.
No, that's awesome. And so with that, I guess, tell us a little bit about the history of your brand and where that came in that timeline a little bit.
Yeah. There are really two brands that mean a lot to me.
Okay.
I grew up putting the cross H, just an H with a big old cross on it, on every animal. And we also had a seed stock operation in addition to the commercial cattle deal. And that was part of our marketing and everything, and it's cross H. And I don't know if I was almost an adult or, mid-teens when I realized the word, our last name Red didn't start with an H. Like, it just had this big old cross H on there. And it's like, it wasn't that I thought it started with H, but I was just kind of like, wow, that's not an R. That's weird.
Yeah.
It just always been part of us, right? My sister now has that. And it's interesting. I still take so much pride in that and in her operation, right? Even though it's hers, not mine.
Sure.
But the Bar X Bar that I use today is actually has an older family history. I'm not sure where my great-grandfather, if he had to buy it from someone, if he was the first one to start using it, but that would have been in the mid-1800s.
Oh, wow.
And interestingly enough, it left the family when they sold a herd of cattle. And then years later, in the 60s, my family bought a herd of, I'm going to have those dates wrong, maybe it was the 50s, but bought a herd of registered cattle, and that brand came with it.
Okay.
And so we always had it, preserved it. And when I was a young kid, I had the opportunity to go to a big scout jamboree, and we were supposed to mark all of our stuff. And I got sick of writing my name on all these things that we were shipping. And my dad said, well, why don't you just use your great-grandfather's brand? Of course, it was our brand. He had it and always kept it registered. Okay. So I started putting Bar X Bar on everything from that day forward. And then as I got older and started to get into the business, it was a natural that I was going to use the old family brand. Already, and so that's what I run on my cattle to this day, is the Bar X Bar. And it's kind of fun to think about the fact that was running around the deserts of Utah and Colorado, almost 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And so that's the story of, as far as I know, that's my version of that brand.
Now I love hearing the history of brands and how it just seems like, a lot of people would think, oh, it's just a brand, but it just carries so much history with it. And
it really, you hear the term outside of ranching. People will talk about writing for the brand or whatnot. And often I don't think they really know what that means.
Right.
But there's just a pride in this is our brand. This is how we do things. And obviously there's a popular TV series now that's made that whole nother connotation to it or whatever. But yeah, it means a lot to people.
Okay. Yeah, I think that history is just something that in this industry you love and embrace, but it's kind of who we are, and like you alluded to before, it's kind of the undescribable reason that we're still doing it. Why did, just like if people that are listening haven't looked into the story of the Hole in the Rock pioneers and what they went through to get into that country, into that desert, that's just a whole different story of amazing determination and grit, and then to be able to raise livestock there and raise families and crops. And I just think that's kind of the story of ranchers in a way of
well put. Yeah, I think that absolute determination to succeed.
Yeah.
Like the failure wasn't an option.
Right.
It's amazing what you'll do when you really decide that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't really, it's hard to explain why we do that, but
yeah, for sure.
Would you mind sharing with us maybe a story of growing up on the ranch, or like something that happened to you, whether you learned it from your father or just an experience while you're on the ranch that kind of maybe shaped you?
You bet. A lot of things come to mind collectively. What's coming to mind right now that I'll share is I don't know how unique it is to being right on a ranch, but it's very symbolic or representative of what happens on a ranch, and that is the unexpected. Right? You just never know. I mean, you're trying to do this, and there's just, I feel like ranching, growing up on a ranch is like the ultimate experience of becoming a really good MacGyver, an ER surgeon. You're just ready for anything.
Yeah.
I remember when I was one of 6 kids, and I was right in the middle.
Okay.
And I was driving with my dad, and he got a call on the 2-way radio that the mare had died, and I knew nothing about it, and that he was going to bring that foal down for my dad's son to take care of. And of course, I was with my dad, so I was sure he meant me. Oh. And so I jumped right on that and like awesome, Dad, can I? And he kind of like, I realized now he had kind of deer in the headlight look, and he's like, yeah. And it was supposed to be for my brother, who was like, I don't know how old he was, 12, 13.
Okay.
But I ended up raising this 3-day-old little foal, little filly.
Okay.
And at that time in my life, that was just what I needed. I was one of 7 kids, kind of easily lost, and I became her mama. Bottle fed her 3-4 times a day. We would walk to the store 2 miles away when I wanted a candy bar, and she would follow me like a dog.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And anyways, her name was Jodina. But like, when I think about growing up on a ranch, like that's just kind of representative of you don't know what experiences you're going to have and how much you're going to grow from them.
Right.
Like in my, at that time in my life, that was just ideal.
Yeah.
Right. And I now have horses that I ride that are out of her.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
You've kept
yeah,
it. Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome.
And so that's just that's one that came to mind,
Yeah.
that's unique from being there. And there's a million other moments like that have molded me.
Yeah. And I think that's just the fact that was just unplanned. Totally, you wouldn't think that would make such a big impact, but I think that's the beautiful thing of living in that situation where you have those animals around. If you have animals, you know there's going to be unexpected things that you can't control and that you just kind of have to roll with.
Yeah.
And you don't know what that's going to do down
just
the road.
The appreciation it teaches you. I mean, I'm probably preaching to the choir, right? I think these are probably mainly ranchers that are listening to this.
Yeah.
But, I remember she had an accident and got a big old gate hook through her lip. And I went over to bottle feed her one time. And, I was traumatized.
Sure.
I 5-6 years old. And we ended up having to take her to the vet. And I've never forgiven my older brother for this. Like, he just thought it was so funny to tell me, I think we're going to have to shoot her, And I couldn't imagine anything more horrible.
Devastating.
Right? And I remember I've never felt so grateful, at least at that point, for that veterinarian and like his skill and his ability to help in the situation. And so even, silly little situations like that, like learning gratitude and appreciation for learning to accept help, you know what I mean? Because on one hand, ranching is all about, I can do it all, right?
Sure.
And here's a situation where like, we need some
we
help.
need help.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a great thing for children, and that in today's world, as we think about kids that are just more and more separated from that lifestyle and agriculture, that they don't get to have those opportunities with animals. And I think that, as I think about my future, that's what I'd really like for my kids, about, just being around animals so that they can learn and appreciate life, but then also, they'll experience animals dying and they'll understand that whole cycle. And so you have children, and they're around that, and so I know a lot of them are a part of that lifestyle. And so tell us about what your plans are with, are they just going to continue in that and continue to build the ranch with you?
Great question. I'd say first and foremost, what's most important to me is that my kids are their own people.
Sure. Right,
that they follow their dreams. If their dreams happen to be ranching, great. And no question, they love the ranch, and there are some of them that will be very involved, it appears, right? Yeah. And they'll get to do that their way and in a way that makes sense for them. But I do love just the involvement. I have a daughter who is a senior in high school, and anyone who has a senior in high school, that like you're just like watching the days, and like in most cases you're not wanting them to leave. Right. And I'm not, I'm just not quite ready for that. And or I guess I'm just drinking in every day. Sure. And like we had an experience the other day where I found myself, and I was frankly kind of irritated at this was happening, but we found ourselves pulling a calf from a cow we didn't even know was pregnant necessarily. Oh. And we were supposed to be doing other things. And here I am with my daughter, and it was a tough birth. The cow ended up dying, and here's this calf that she's now bottle fed, but like literally an experience where my daughter was in tears because of what's going on, and like in the moment it's like this stinks.
Yeah.
And then like something just hit me, like maybe half an hour later I was like, what an amazing experience to have with my daughter.
Yeah.
And it was, right? And we talk about it all the time, and life lessons, and I mean there's some genetic lessons we've talked about too, right? This was an unknown cow and an unknown bull that wasn't supposed to be pregnant. There are unknown genetics on the cow, I should say. But I guess it's kind of back to the Jodina and that story. These unexpected things, they're often the things you don't want to happen. But that's what I love the most with having my kids here. And when I look back to my childhood, I loved believing that I had done a man's work, right? And there's times when I truly had, right, but that I would be entrusted enough to go get something done. And so when I think of my kids and like what I want them to learn and what I think I learned is like in their life to know that like no one is coming, right? Like we have a whole, we've got 250 head of to process. Maybe it's calves and the wind's blowing and we can hardly keep our eyes open. The sand's in our face, and like there's no one that's going to rescue us from this. Like we just have to get it done.
Yeah.
That satisfaction of pushing through that's what I want them to experience, and that's what I feel has really helped me realize no one is coming. I'm 100% responsible for my life. Yeah, and that's a little tougher to teach outside of ranching.
Yeah,
we've spent some time with our kids in the city, if you will, and it's not. I'm sure there are ways. It just doesn't seem as natural and as intuitive to teach these life lessons and law of the harvest and all that.
Right.
Anyway, so that's why I like ranches. They're like a parent hack, like all these things that can help teach your kids, because if you're not a good parent, so that's probably where I'm at.
Well, no, we were talking about earlier about how just being in ranching or agriculture is a very fulfilling life pursuit. But then on top of that, I think you add raising children in that can just be even that much more fulfilling. And I don't, currently have any children. I don't know what that's like, but I hope to one day. And so I just think that for you, being able to see your children grow up around that and to see them kind of be molded by those experiences of hard work and challenges and like you just shared, learning those life lessons of like, knowing how to work when you need to work. Yeah. But I think that's invaluable. And
it's interesting, they'll all take different things. If you take my two oldest sons, my two oldest children, one is actively becoming a pilot. The other one is studying agriculture and wants nothing more than to be a cowboy and a cattleman, right? Yet they both learned these lessons. So the lessons, I've always felt really strongly, the lessons shouldn't be, you need to be a cattleman or a livestock producer to provide value in this world. It's more, hey, what can we learn while we're trying to be good stewards here?
Yeah.
And take that into other areas of life as well. In the end, right, that's all we're trying to do is be good stewards of what God's created.
Right.
And sometimes that's a little humbling.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's super rewarding.
It is. And to piggyback off of that, in today's world, that's kind of the challenge that we have in agriculture, is that we feel like we're doing our best to be the best stewards that we can on the land, yet we're under attack from all different sides, saying that we're not, and that we're destroying the land. And so is there anything that you would want to share with somebody that is in agriculture but struggling under this attack from people, or any advice you'd give to somebody who's struggling in agriculture right now?
That's a great question. It'd be really easy for me to talk about, hey, there's some programs, there's some things out there, but like overall, my thought is like, you're the ultimate environmentalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And don't ever forget that, and that's okay, right? As far as taking care of that ground. But what I would say is, I feel like while it's true that, hey, if we think of what, maybe Grandpa said or whoever said, take care of the ground, take care of the cattle, they'll take care of you. I would say that's definitely true, but only to an extent. So if I was going to give any advice unsolicited that nobody wants, and I need to take this all the time, that would be to pay attention to the numbers, right? Sometimes I think we take that, hey, if I take care of if I'm taking care of the cattle and I'm taking care of the ground, everything will be all right. And we live in a world where that's not the case, right? We've got to be proactive. And, if we're on BLM and Forest Service permits, we need to be really proactive in protecting them, because perception is reality as far as the public's concerned, right? And so I would encourage people to be more active on that side of, like, hey, manage the perception of what's happening on your ranch, and to make sure you're getting help with or spending the time to know what your numbers are, because that's, in the end, if we can't be profitable, there is no legacy moving forward.
Yeah.
So that would be my 2 cents.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. The data that we have, the numbers we have, those are tools, and if we're not using them, we're not helping ourselves at all. And we're trying to just, like you said, pass that legacy on and help it continue so that children and grandchildren can just continue to enjoy.
On that note of, like, sometimes we feel like a legacy, we have in our mind what it is. It's like my father, when he took over the seed stock operation, it was all Hereford cattle.
Oh.
Right? And he decided to start integrating Red Angus at that time. And his father, my grandfather, was like, what are you doing, right? But he had this vision, right? And in hindsight, and then I've made other changes, right? Now I'm not in the seed stock business anymore. But I remember considering, this is when I was working closely with my dad, we were considering making a big change. And I said something to the effect, what would Grandpa think? I feel like this isn't being true to his legacy. And my dad corrected me real quick in a kind manner and said, his legacy was figuring out what worked, not doing something that worked 50 years ago and being dog determined that you have to keep doing it.
Interesting.
So that's kind of always stuck with me, that I think sometimes we have in our mind that, like, the legacy of ranching is that we have to do it the way Grandpa did it. If we involve technology or whatever, a new practice, it's we're not being true to that. And I think, ranchers are the ultimate innovators. I mean, there's a reason we can fix anything with an old piece of baling wire, Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great thought, because I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are out of the business now because they kind of said, oh, I have to do it this way. That's how my grandpa did it, great grandpa did it. But that doesn't work today. And so if you could work yourself right out of business without being able to adapt and change.
It's really about getting real about what the principles are that made them successful, right?
Right.
Versus the exact how-tos.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Well, as we kind of wrap things up, are there any goals that you'd like to share with as you continue to mold and change with your ranches and your legacy, I guess we could talk about? Is there any goals that you have that you'd like, a direction you'd like to take, or anything that you'd like to share?
Well, that's a fun and a difficult question, but yeah, I have a goal. As we have a few different properties, ranches that we're starting to work together. I want it to be a place not just where there's healthy ground and healthy cattle, but healthy people. And that's so easy to say, right? And I think sometimes as the owner, right, it's all about, okay, this ranch, either I'm a slave to the ranch, or the ranch, if it makes any money, I get it all, or whatever, get all the glory. And what I really want, is going to take us a while to get there, but is for this to be a place where the families are healthy, people are, their life's moving forward, it's, while they may be riding for the brand, it's totally okay if someday they move on to do something else because of their time at Red Summit. Yeah. So that's kind of a lofty goal as far as like wanting this to be a place where it really changes people's lives. But I guess maybe I'm just getting old, and having a ranch, be in good shape, and figuring out how to make a little bit of money with it isn't as rewarding as seeing people's lives change. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll mention this. I'm amazed that impact a healthy environment can do, and I'm amazed at the impact a healthy culture can have on people who come to work there or visit. When I was 10, 12 years old, my cousin from the city would come spend anywhere from a week to a month with me. And I just thought it was the greatest. And we would work, and probably when we were 12, we were working a lot harder than when we were 11, 10. But sure. I can remember living in a cow camp and in a trailer, and then we would work with this cowboy during the day. And I just thought it was the greatest. I thought his parents had sent him to hang out with me, right? I've only realized now they wanted that experience for him. Okay. And what he was learning and whatnot. And so I guess in a nutshell, I want to make sure our ranches stay that. Yeah. They stay a place to mold lives in the positive. And just interestingly enough, even if it was all about that, we couldn't do that if we weren't profitable. Right. And so we have a huge emphasis on being profitable, knowing our numbers, having each manager know exactly how to move the needle instead of just be a yes man. Yeah. They know what they can do to make a difference. And it's amazing how it seems like all of our intellect grows and our perspective grows the moment we're responsible for the results, and we have more information shared with us than maybe if you were just viewed as a laborer. Right. But if you can see how that impacts the future of the place, and you're responsible for a number. So I don't know. I answered your question very good. But basically, we're trying to become world class in a very down to earth kind of way. That's what we're trying to do. I like that. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. And just kind of a higher picture, a higher goal of not just having a successful ranch, but having that ranch have an impact on the people that are there and around it. I think that's and including our neighbors, including everyone, right? Yeah. And just have it be a positive impact. Yeah. No, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. You bet. This has been fun. It has been fun. I appreciate all that you're doing, and it's been great. Yeah. Thanks, McKay. Thank you.